Hello, EDS 541. We are almost done. See, when we started way back in August, I thought to myself, how am I ever going to remember 541? Well, as it turns out, if you say it over and over again for, 14 weeks, you start to remember it. So, welcome, EDS 541. Unit 11, Cultural and Linguistic Diversity. So, this first slide, I have a picture of a child with albinism who's African. How did we do last week? All right, last week. We talked about the adjustment to blindness, and some of the takeaways from the discussion were all the stereotypes of blindness, and have we fallen prey to them? Yes, we have. Many of you were very brave in saying exactly which stereotypes you used to believe in and how your exposure to your work and this class has really showed you how those stereotypes affect your students and ways that you can overcome those stereotypes so that you can help your student with the adjustment process. The adjustment process, is it just something that you got to get over and move on? No, it's not. It is a lifelong process. We're lucky we actually have someone in the class who has a visual impairment, and so Christina, her post was awesome, and she was talking about how every time she moves from a city or a state, it's another adjustment process. She's got to learn new strategies all over again, and I thought that was awesome. That everyone with a visual impairment goes through adjustment. That was another takeaway from the readings that Tuttle spoke about. So whether you have a progressive condition or you were born with blindness, the adjustment it might be different, but it's still an adjustment, and it's still those stereotypes that we have to fight against. And someone also brought up, I think it was Melissa French. If it wasn't Melissa, then I am sorry. She talked about all children have different eyes, learn to play and make friends. And you know what? I have never heard of this book, and I Googled it, and it's not in print anymore. So if anybody has a copy and you're in the Denver metro area and you want to share, you can let me make a copy. I'd love to check it out. So email me. Unit 11. What's gonna go on this week? So I tried to make it. I thought, how should we do this for Thanksgiving? Because it had to be a unit. You don't actually get this week off. UNC has online classes do work through this week. So, but I didn't want to kill you with work either. On the flip side, this unit is really, really important. So please keep that in mind. This all the units are important, but this one, you're definitely going to have kids. You're going to have students that are culturally diverse, that they are linguistically diverse, that they're English language learners. This is a fact of life, and so please make sure that you do the readings and that you keep up, and have a great Thanksgiving too. We're going to be reading Foundations of Education, Chapter 8, Diversity and Its Implications. That's actually written by Dr. Correa Torres. I don't know if any of you know her. And Paula Conroy. And Madeline Milan, which she also teaches at UNC in the Culturally and Linguistically Education Department. And there's a discussion. So make sure you, as usual, add to the discussion by Wednesday. Cultural diversity. So cultural diversity, it affects our beliefs in disability. I had a student who was from Mexico, and her mother told me that she was praying every day for her child to not be blind anymore. And at first I thought, wow, I don't know what to say, because my culture, it would be different than that. But at the same time, I thought a lot about it. I went home and I thought, well, how do I deal with that? I don't want them to be in denial. I think as teachers, we And I think someone actually shared in the last discussion last week that they had spoken to a child about understanding their visual impairment. And as teachers, that's what we're taught to do, right? Make sure that our students can advocate for themselves, and that's, it's very important that they understand their visual impairment. At the same time, I thought really hard about it, and I thought, I don't have a child with a disability. I've had children that have been very sick before, and I did pray. I think that we all have different beliefs, but I can't begrudge a mother because she's praying that her child's life will be easier. So those are just some of the things you might come into contact, or you probably will come into contact with, thinking, are these parents, do they have different beliefs in their child's disability than I do, and how do I address that? Do I need to? They might have different beliefs in education than you do. Their cultural diversity might impact their behavior, and it definitely affects their motivators. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. I was working with a woman who, no matter what, if the kid was, younger than maybe 8, she brought like Elmo toys and things like that. And the little girl that we were working with was from India, and she was really motivated by Bollywood, actually. So all those Bollywood songs were motivators for her, but the Elmo song was not. And so how do you find that out? Well, you need to know your student. Yeah. I also want to point out that our own culture, or I should say my culture, has a different idea of disability that really bothers me. And I should say I come from a culture where individuals with disability must rise above it, right? We don't recognize them as being great people unless they're superheroes. This is the example of the blind person that's climbing Mount Everest, and this is a person who's winning Olympic medals. And if you have a disability, then somehow you need to be doing something extra special and great. It's the super crip idea that the culture that I come from has, and just having a disability and kind of being a regular person's not really acceptable. And so I often think about this when I come into contact with other people from other cultures who have different ideas of disability. I have to remind myself my own culture isn't exactly, we're not doing everything right either. So don't make assumptions. This is a big deal. Police officers are not the only people who racially profile. So here's a picture of 2 sisters. They are sisters. They are full-blooded sisters. They have the same parents. Their parents have a lot of genetic diversity. And so I think their mother is African American or Islander and white. And the father is something else, but they have a lot of genetic diversity, and they're actually twins. Obviously not identical, but I always like to use this example of people not making assumptions. I have 3 children myself, and my husband and I have a lot of genetic diversity, and one of our children is a little bit darker than the others, and I've had really weird comments. I had the first grade teacher ask me why Ava was spicy. That was my favorite. Why is Ava spicy? And that was just so crazy, right? And I had another teacher she wanted to be very culturally respectful to Ava. And I at the time I thought, what? Because she had our older daughter the year prior and was not needing to be culturally respectful the year before, but now she wants to be culturally respectful. So I said, my daughters have the same culture, so I assume what worked last year will work this year. So it's really important. How do we not make those assumptions? We ask. Classroom teachers do this all the time, right? At the beginning of the year, they pass out preference sheets, and they ask kids, how do you spend family time? What do you like to do with your family? What are some customs that your family enjoys doing? What is your favorite time of the year? That kind of thing, so that you're not just celebrating Cinco de Mayo because you have a child that's a little darker in your class. Linguistic diversity. What is the role of the TVI with a student who is learning English? So the role of the TVI is the same as the role of TVI for a child who already knows English. We are providing access. And so it's just going to look a little different. We need to make sure that the things like the WIDA access exam to assess the competency in English is accessible. We need to be making those accommodations, and we need to be teaching assistive technology to low vision kids. We need to be teaching Braille if that's what the learning media assessment decides. So it's really not the same, and we need to make sure that we need to provide adequate services, but we're not responsible for teaching that child English. And I've seen quite a few TVIs actually fall into that, and I think that's because maybe the school or the classroom teacher is like, hey, this kid's blind, so all of their issues are yours too, and that's not the case. To provide adequate services, we need to make sure we're at least doing our part. We need to be collaborating with those cultural and linguistic diversities to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're teaching the same things. We also need to collaborate with parents. We talked about this earlier in the semester, making sure that students, that we talked to parents, and we need to reach out and make sure that we're getting interpreters so that we can make those contacts if they're not English speakers. And above all, just being really respectful of everyone's differences. And last but not least, I have a picture of a pink turkey. So happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy a little bit of break. Hope you have a little bit of a break, and enjoy your families, and have a great week.